Have you ever wondered what makes creative people tick? Where do their ideas come from? What keeps them energized? What kinds of things get in their way? Is their life really as much fun as it looks from the outside? Hello, I'm your host, Lily Pierpont, and this is ArtStorming, a podcast about how ideas become paintings or poems, performances, or collections. Each episode, I'll chat with a guest from the arts community, and we'll explore how the most creative among us stare down a blank canvas or reach into the void and create something new. In our inaugural season, ArtStorming the City Different, we dipped our toes into the vast ocean of creativity with a focus on some of our favorite creators of Santa Fe, New Mexico. That conversation was enjoyed by artists and non-artists alike because it showed us how we can all benefit from learning how to generate something from nothing, dream bigger, charter new territories, and solve problems in new ways. In Season 2, we're going to take that concept of generating our lives with intention to the next level. This season, we're talking about legacy, art as legacy, and how the most creative among us tackle this rich and deeply personal subject. Welcome to ArtStorming, the Art of Remembrance. So, how do you turn a personal tragedy into a gift for the community? Well, today we're ArtStorming with artist Deb Todd Wheeler about radio silence, an audio walk that she created in Brookline's Lost Pond after the loss of her son Lucas. In this conversation, we're diving into how she uses art to navigate grief, honor memory, and find a way to heal alongside nature. It's a beautiful look at how even our darkest moments can lead us to deep connection. I am with Deb Todd Wheeler, and I know of you because of your brother-in-law, Daniel, who has known about this project for a little while. We were waiting for Season 2 to kind of come on board so that I could talk to him about his artwork. And in the process of talking to him about his artwork, he told me about your amazing project. So first, let me open by saying my deepest condolences for the loss of your son, which is the inspiration for your work. And from there on, I'm going to let you take the mic and tell all of our listeners, what is the project? How was it inspired? Your whole story.
Wow. Well, thank you for inviting me on. So lovely. And for Dan for recommending. My project is called Radio Silence, and it is an audio walk, a geolocated audio walk located in the Lost Pond outside of Boston, Mass, in Brookline. And let's see how to begin.
Well, just parenthetically, I have family in Brookline.
You do?
So what you don't know is that this summer I almost pounced on you because I was doing an East Coast trip to visit relatives. And some of my cousins who are in Brookline, and it was an end-of-life situation with one of my cousins there, and I had to debate whether I was going to come up, try to find you, and have our conversation face-to-face, and maybe even walk Lost Pond so that I could really have the whole thing come alive for me. But I had the puppy in tow, and so it got nixed. But anyway, so you're in Brookline, and start at the beginning.
I was listening to you talk about your own story and the sort of shock of having to jump into dealing with sudden death and not knowing where to begin. And Lucas, my son, he died at 18 years old. He died in his sleep of nothing. His heart stopped and he just didn't wake up. That can happen. And so you can imagine or maybe don't imagine what that might be like. It's terrible. Lucas died, and 4 or 5 days later, we right away did a celebration of life when we got a bagpipe guy and like everyone that we knew. It was so shocking. It's so shocking. It's still so shocking. Everyone who knew Lucas, who knew us, friends of friends, just like came together. And I had called my old assistant, Allison Layton, who lives in Brooklyn, and she had started a floral business. And I called her like the next day and was like, can you just load a truck with everything you can find and come up and bring as many flowers as you can and just make something completely magical? And so she and all of my like old students from Mass Art or Mass College of Art, where I taught for many years, and friends worked through the night to make the church, the local church who was letting us set up, make these incredible flowers. It was very beautiful. And the reason I'm talking about the flowers is because those were the day after we had so many flowers, we didn't really know what to do with them. And so I knew of a place in the Lost Pond that we could make sort of a shrine with all like more flowers than you could imagine. And that was a place that we returned to over and over again. And I'm not sure how much of this backstory to go into, but like 11 months after, that's my dog, 11 months after Lucas died, my brother Rob, who was like my collaborator, my closest, oldest, he's 18 months older than me. He's a filmmaker, and he took his life. And after being persecuted by the college he was working for in a ridiculous, I'm not going to go into it because I'll catch on fire talking about it, in a ridiculous scandal. And that same day, my husband found out, Rob went missing. My husband, Andrew, found out he had cancer. And yeah, and then a third thing. And it was like August from hell. And we searched for Rob for 3 days and the whole community. Anyway, so that is the shock that begins my project of being in cancer spouse mode. My son Eli, who was 15 at the time, trying to figure out how to make sure he didn't go mad over the assault of bad news and loss. And Rob and I had been making music in a band, Lenny Collective, for many years, for a few years at the time. And I had written a bunch of songs, and my friend from the band, Terrence Reeves, everyone was so distraught that Rob had taken his life, asked how we could possibly go forward living. And one of the things we decided to do was record the songs. And we felt like, since Rob played bass, that his bass lines still lived in our memories, and that we could just put our minds to doing that. And yeah, so I was in that space of trying to keep moving, keep going to appointments, cancer appointments, treatments, blah, 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 recording, Eli to school, all of the things that a mom is like, the juggles while in absolute shock. So I was like 2 sudden deaths and a good cancer. And Andrew, parentheses, is fine. He's good. He's completely healthy now. And Eli, I will jump ahead to my son Eli, who's a senior at University of Vermont in social work, he works in hospice. He's a social worker working on bereavement. So his journey has led him into his life work. And so those two things are, along with the artwork that has emerged from the trauma of that, those are some of the sort of roses and the thorns. So let me tell you a little bit about Radio Silence, which is the project I led for 5 years in the Lost Pond. And it began with a course I took online at the time called Vulture, Courting the Otherwise in a Time of Breakdown, which it caught a friend of mine's eye. And we were like, that's a great title. Vulture, Courting the Otherwise in a Time of Breakdown. I'm in a time of breakdown. I'm courting the otherwise. And I'm picking through the bones, the dead right now. Terrible.
Yeah, really.
It was a course that was online. This is way before the pandemic, and it was a global community. And we met, and one of the ways forward in the class was he asked us to pick a non-human site partner. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to pick Lost Pond. And they're like, go there, return there, return there. So I'm recording the music I'm going to Lost Pond and jump ahead to lots of returning, lots of recording, lots of thinking, recording the site, recording sounds at this site. And one of the things I discovered while I was at Lost Pond was that it is a site of reclamation. It was a Superfund site. It was like the old town dump that had been adjacent to it. And so a whole section of it, I'm going to back up now. This is not going to make any sense. But the morning that Lucas died, the day after, actually, we went into these woods at Lost Pond. So it was before his funeral. So if I was going to do this interview thoughtfully, I would have started here.
Oh no,
So,
it's totally fine to go. I'm following it, Pod. Don't even give it a second.
I would start here because, and if you read, so the Radio Silence audio walk, I made up into all of the walks into a book of walks, and it begins at this point, which is that we arrive, family arrives into the woods in a stupor of shock, and the Lost Pond woods were being cut down. This whole section of the woods were being remediated. We didn't know why at the time, but it was like, not Lucas is dead and the forest is being raised. And so we're like screaming, what is happening? Why are you raising this forest? With like the world is ending and in our little backyard. And it was so audio wise, it was so shocking. It was so screaming trees and, this whole giant area.
Well, it was like the earth expressing your own shock and trauma.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Like just like I'm being cut down on my knees. We all are. Yeah. So what the point of that is that when I had this thought that I would take the songs that we were working on and I would geolocate them in the Lost Pond. And so we began with a song called Gone, where you're walking up this road, and the lyrics of the song, and these were songs written before anyone died, and they were written with a very different thing in mind, but the lyric is, if what you know is gone, if what you love is gone, if what you fear is gone. And the idea was like, oh, well, like, what's holding you back? If you got rid of that, what would be left? What would you do? And then that's not what, and so, but in this case, once the song was finished, we recorded it in the after. So a lot of the sounds are sounds recorded in the space in the Lost Pond, and they're layered into the music with the rhythm, and you're walking and hearing sounds from before or sounds from another time and sounds of the song and sounds of now, and you enter into the Lost Pond through this road. And so I geolocated all the songs through the paths, and what that means is if you have an app, and if you have your app on your phone, which I send you ahead of time, as you're walking, the songs start in your ear. And we walk and hear a song and sounds and then stop and talk for a little bit. And that happens 7 times with 7 songs in the cycle. And the peak song is called Bear Hunt, and I'll send it to you if you like. And that is the song that you hear as you approach Lucas's shrine in the woods, which is this beautiful, like, covered in flowers and mementos and all sorts of things that people have given. And we stay at the Lost Pond. If you go on the audio, we stay at the shrine, at Lucas's shrine, for a good amount of time and have a conversation. It's sort of the peak, one of the 2 peak moments of the walk. And so I finished it, and then I offered it to some friends. And then over time, it was like 5 years, the pandemic hit, and then there was a conversation around grief happening around me, around like the loss of community, these larger stories of grief, that was everything that was being sort of pulled down, dismantled, questioned. And so I found myself doing the walk, 1 or 2 people at a time, a couple hundred people, a lot of students who were in school and feeling very lonely because it was an outdoor thing. It was like, because it was an outdoor thing, it was safe to do. And it was, for me, it was a way to process what Francis Weller calls the 5 gates of grief, which, are you familiar with Francis's work? To be in witness to not only the the loss of community, but the other many, many losses happening that would emerge through these conversations. And one of the things that was very beautiful and still remains beautiful to me is that when we come down the hill after this song called Plea, we come down this hill and we enter into what is called, and I call it the clearing. And that is the place that was raised when Lucas was died. And when you walk in to the clearing, the song has ended and you walk into the clearing and everything growing is as old as he is gone. And so it's a space of deep regrowth. So all the trees, all of the grasses, everything growing there is the shape and size of the space between now and when he died. And that I look back at now, the raising as this enormous gift. So I go in there and I just lie on a giant rock, just take it in. Yeah, so the Book of Walks is assembled geographically. So when you read it, it's like one walk around the site through time. So I'll talk a little bit about different bits of different conversations and questions that happened along the way of different people. That's my synopsis.
Holy cow. I mean, I remember reading, I guess I first visited this story. It was maybe a couple of years ago. And one of the things that I also remember being really struck by was that after you moved the flowers to the shrine area, that people continued to contribute to that so that it stayed a living memorial for quite some time, or maybe even till the present. Obviously, the field, that the clearing is nature's tribute to your son, but there was a community tribute to your son that kept on going too. Say a little bit about that.
I want to take another minute to remind you listeners that ArtStorming is a listener-supported nonprofit, and we need your help to keep the conversation going. Every dollar goes directly into programs that support our mission. That means more compelling stories, more in-depth articles, and a greater impact on our community. If you love what you hear, please consider making a contribution. Visit our website for more ways to engage, and thank you for being an essential part of our work.
Yeah, friends and strangers, I would say until this year, we let it pretty much go. It's very gray right now, but for 7 years, it was incredibly vibrant. It would get a little gray and then it would be like built up again by someone coming by with something. And there was one audio walk I was doing with a college student, and we were coming towards the shrine, and I said to her, we got to hurry because I hear a lot of children coming behind us. I don't know what it is, but I heard like playing, and the woods are very empty. It's not called the Lost Pond for no reason. It's a very confusing set of trails. It's tiny, but it's like you can get lost. But I heard a lot of kids behind us, and I was like, we got to move. I want us to get into the shrine before whatever is coming behind us, the wall of kid sounds, the screaming, comes. So we grab our earbuds in, we enter into the shrine, the song is going, the lyric is, I'm not trying to break your heart, and you're not trying to break my heart. And we're listening to it, it's like around and around, and then all of a sudden, the song is going around and around, and all of a sudden it must have been 100 kids, like 9-year-olds. They come around us like, and they're around the shrine, they're running around, they're really out of control. And I take my earbuds out and I'm like, hey, and they're like, do you know the boy in the woods? And I was like, I'm the mom of the boy in the woods. And so they had their own mythology around who he was, because there's a little picture of him in there and like why he was there. And I realized that there's this whole other life of imaginings of people encountering this space of commemoration. It's not just Lucas, it's like other people who want to come and just be in that zone of commemoration. So it ended up being a very, for me, just like, not just for me, like a sacred place for those who stumbled upon it. because if you see pictures of it, it's like, it's big, it's beautiful. So
Well,
the last big color of it was he died on 9/11, which is also so,
good Lord.
I know. I love that date because it's like, yep, everyone is like, it's a day of remembrance. And I'm like, yeah, personal and global. So we get to take a pause in that and reignite the color in the shrine. Yeah.
Well, please send me some photographs, whatever you feel best represents various different stages of that living memorial, because that would be a wonderful thing to add to this podcast. Well, I'm kind of speechless because the number of layers to this, it's so profound on so many levels that it almost sounds like it was, I don't know, this divine,
Mm.
I don't know, event
Mhm.
that your son, Lucas, was the catalyst for. And to be the person who then ushered that tragedy into this incredibly multi-layered blessing for the community, for the world, as a model for a way to do this for other people. It's just there's so many beautiful qualities to it. It's really profound. Have other people approached you about how to do a walk of grief or a memorial project of this magnitude in other regions of the country?
No. No, well, maybe I've been asked and I don't know. I think I push people to read the book and see, only because it's got all the good questions and all of its own sort of not instructions, but it exists as this own ritual where you can experience the space and the community of it outside of Lost Pond. But yeah, I don't know how I don't know. I'm moving into, I guess it's a moment for me, having moved into another project where I've putting my head up a little bit from my own experience, lifting my head and looking out at, I guess I'm looking up, looking for kinship in the cultural conversation around preservation. And which I feel like when I was listening to your other episodes or your first episode of this season, really thinking about what that means in terms of legacy and objects and how to align with the very urgent cultural conversation right now around the destruction of literal structures and institutions. And I feel like there's a lot of destruction happening. And I'm interested in those people who are connected to the longer conversation of preservation. And in this way, the role audio has in such a thing is interesting to me. And yeah, so I love working with people on trying to help them develop rituals of their own. That is something that I do, offer grief rituals, and have done that in community to take people on a sort of a, more metaphoric 90-minute walk through Lost Pond together away from the space. But yeah.
Wow, there are just so many things. So in I think it was our first episode, Elizabeth Fergus Jean, who was in Michigan, and she creates these labyrinth walks that are very mindful, kind of parallel to some of the things that you're doing. But what's fascinating to me that I did not expect was that there would be such an environmental thread through every single one of these episodes. There seems to be a tie-in to a major metaphor about the legacy of the earth and how we are becoming stewards and what our choices are around that. And so it's another perfect tie-in what you're saying. And I love this idea of that you're supporting people to create rituals. I mean, you're certainly in a wonderful position to do that. And it's something that we need. And these rituals around the earth and preservation is exactly in alignment with what the conversations that I'm trying to provoke and evoke here in this. So it's so perfect that you're doing this. And parenthetically, we're going to have you may have noticed this in some of the materials, but we're creating a virtual exhibition space called Remains to Be Seen that will be the accompaniment to this podcast, where we can have memorial arts objects and projects that we can bring people to in virtual time anyway. So I'm hoping that Lost Pond or the book walks can be a part of that exhibition. Yes, indeed. And that would be a beautiful way to integrate this conversation into that. And then we also have a project that we're talking about that is about rewilding golf courses into memorial art spaces. And I feel like that would be a really wonderful way for us to collaborate and take your project a little bit farther. So we will be talking about that.
I love that.
So tell me the project that you're working on now, how is it manifesting and what are some of the really interesting things that are coming from it now?
We're going to pause here for a moment to speak to our listeners. If you like this content and want more information on our guests, their projects, and more in-depth ways to engage with us, you can find us on artbridgenm.org or our ArtBridge Substack. Please read, follow, and share our content. Your subscriptions, shares, and contributions help us grow our artistic community. Thank you, and now back to our conversation.
It's so convoluted. It might be a whole other conversation, but I started taking pictures of the light in Lucas's bedroom. He has one window and the light comes in at a certain time of day and makes these incredible sort of shadows, and working with a pinhole camera, which is like a box with a hole. And I wrote a piece with video of pictures of other bedrooms that are being preserved, like George Washington slept here, but like all historic bedrooms from across time, new sites that have been added to the National Register as important sites where people slept. And I'm doing this with my hands. One image dissolves into the next. It's a video of many bedrooms dissolving. And I wrote a thought piece around this question about the preservers, those of us who preserve and sleep and dreaming in bedrooms where no one is sleeping, and Edison's quest to banish darkness from our lives and his bias against sleepers. He wasn't a big sleeper. It's a thought piece around lots of different topics around that. And I collaborate with an artist named Sue Murad. We approached these historic house museums to see if we could perform the piece together in their homes. And so
that is so cool. I have to ask you, is Emily Dickinson's, I went to school in the Amherst area.
Oh,
and
you did?
I kept envisioning Emily Dickinson's bedroom as you were describing.
Yeah. Well, we only want to work really locally because it's a lot of moving parts to do this. So we're in the Boston area and just sort of trying to stay local. We would love to go afar, but it's like a whole other thing.
It's funny for you to say that Amherst is afar when we're out here in New Mexico. It seems like that's like right next door, but I totally get it.
Yeah. Well, we are like filthy with old houses here. So we the last one we did was at the Gropius house in Lincoln, which is a treasure, modernist treasure that is, was built in 1938 by Walter Gropius. Is like escaping Nazi Germany, which is like perfect timing for us to be in that house performing this piece, and it like super touching. We try to get the audiences I'm interested in intimate audiences. The Radio Silence audio walk is a very intimate audience, just over time. Many people got to see or experience, but I really like the connectiveness of that tight awareness of who is listening, who is there. And so our audience size for those houses is like between 9 and 15 people at a time come through, and we give them food and we help them. What happens when they arrive is they get to handle some objects that the house has allowed us to touch. We do these things with them with light, and then we get the audience to be taking these sort of video pictures of bedroom. And so by the time I start talking about taking pictures of the bedroom in Lucas's room, they also have just finished taking these images. And so we're sitting together having done something that is like, I'm doing it, you're doing it, we are doing it. And so Sue and I work in concert to make this thing happen for people that is very edited in action and word, but it is around light, commemoration, preservation, and objects, and the sort of like second lives of objects, or the persistence of objects through the generations that have been held aside. And so when I was reading your plan your exit, your artful exit, the talisman, and I was brought to this moment where when we're working with a house, the first question is like, is there anything in this house that you will let us touch? And the answer is always no. And so, but then when we're asking further, it's like, is anything getting dusted? Yes. What are you using to dust it? Oh, this brush. Can I touch that? Yes. And then they realize, like, we're not talking about so much the things preserved as the tools of the preserver. And what are you using to keep everything else kind of still vibrant and not covered in dust? One of the elements of the project is dust and light. That's a super convoluted project. People can sign up to join an audience on my website, which I'll put a link to, but it's a very small group of people who can fit. And we'll be in residence this year at the Forbes House Museum in Milton, Mass. And that's a beautiful house. We did something there this 2025. So we're looking forward to digging in 2026 to offer more.
And what's the invitation for the participants? Once they've had this experience, what's the invitation for them to do with that experience?
We're still working on that. That something happens in there. We know that something gets communicated around the darkness, the light, the things that are living in us that need maybe to move a little bit. And we're hoping that things just shift a little bit in welcoming the conversation around loss processing. It is a big conversation around loss processing. And so that is one that I feel like you don't want to hit directly. You just want to create like a little container for it to move.
Yeah.
And Lost Pond is that container. You could just go through and not say a word and just be listening, and something maybe will shift after. And at No Sleeping, same. You go through the whole thing. You might not say, the audience doesn't say a word until the very end if they want to. But it's that container for processing gets ignited a little bit.
Well, I relate so much to both of these initiatives, because so much of what happens in our culture is we do something for a direct impact, or that somehow has an exchange. And what you're doing, what we're trying to do, are plant these seeds and just create this fertile ground, literally, for something new to be brought forth. And that something new has a gestation period, and you can't force it and you can't predict it. But what's challenging about it is that, you sort of let this thing go free, and then you have to, I guess it's like raising children. You just have to let it go and trust that the butterfly effect will have its way. It's so interesting. So many of the people that I've interviewed in this season are stewards of that kind of project, and they didn't set out to do that, but it's just the result of when you realize that what we need to do is create a vessel for this experience and then leave it alone. It's so hard in our controlling mindsets.
Yeah, what are the evaluation metrics for such
Exactly. And as a
I
teacher or whatever, even if we're all a nonprofit organization, it's like, to get the money, they want the metrics. And how do you measure these things?
Yeah,
these
and
incredible qualitative experiences.
Yeah, and I think it wrestled a long time with writing the Book of Walks. I knew I wanted to write it. I didn't know if I wanted to share it. And I'm curious about that in terms of, your other guests. But there's one thing to do these loss processing projects that are highly personal. And a lot of it is my own loss processing I'm inviting others into in a very stoic way, frankly. But I'm not sure the value of sharing. When you put something out into the world, you have no idea how it will be received. It could be received well, it could be ignored, it could be somebody be like, that's garbage. And you really want to have a thing that you really, really, really care about dismissed. I mean, you really can't care, I guess, A, and B, or, I mean, who doesn't care? But that part of sharing is its own art form. And so in No Sleep, so that was how I shared the work at Lost Pond, is through the book, which I think is a beautiful experience of reading. I do think that. And the No Sleeping project, we're working this year, Sue and I are working to figure out how to share it in a way that is more immersive, maybe artist talk, or something where the work gets shared outside of the tiny container, because we're super aware of the limitations. We don't take any pictures in there when it's happening. We don't want anybody to feel like they're part of like a, a guinea pig or something. That's like, this thing is happening. It's super effective, and then we're done. We leave. We close up. We put our things away, and thank the house and thank the people, and to the next. And so so we're thinking right now, like, what is sharing? What does it look like?
Well, it's interesting that you went from an exterior situation with the Book of Walks, where it's a self-guided thing. So anybody can walk through that space. They have their own experience. You've created a virtual and augmented experience for them. The bedroom project is much more contained. And so thanks to the video aspect of that project, or whatever that can be shared with a larger audience for people to have their own private experience with what you've given them. But I think it's so interesting that you have these two very different ways of access and entry points, And is there any way for you to measure how many people have gone through the Lost Wood?
Well, I personally guided, like, my logbook has 260 people. I think I personally guided, and then other people do it because the code is there, and I have no idea. And yeah, I don't know. And I love that it maybe carries on. I don't like guiding it, and I stopped guiding it when Brookline paved over the roots of the moss. And I can show you these beautiful pictures of what it was like when we would walk through the mossy roots of the bog. And the song is the song called Surge, and it was written sort of in a way that, or recorded in a way that would encourage this sort of tempo. And then there are accessibility issues, which I totally understand, for people to go through the bog. The city then felt like they had to fill it in. And so once it got filled in, the magic was gone for me. So that I know. I was like, now we're just walking. We were walking before, like, thinking, or like step and step and step and watch where you step. And it's like caretaking. And then now it's like, you just walk. So when that happened, the magic just.
Well, it's so wild too, because you probably never in your wildest imagination thought that you were starting an environmental advocacy project. But what you did, and so I'm now curious to know, like, how did the city or the powers that be respond to this project? Suddenly you've brought attention to a maybe neglected part, or not as well known part of your neighborhood, and now all of a sudden it's become a focal point and people are being drawn there. And so did the city acknowledge this project in any official way?
No, it doesn't. There's nothing like there to acknowledge. The shrine is in the Kennard Woods, where that has like a beautiful group that has allowed us to be there. But the Lost, you wouldn't know that this is happening. People are just going through walks. They have earbuds in. You wouldn't know. And it's not something that I advertise. Yeah, I don't. If you can't tell, I'm not a big sharer. I do these projects. They're super involved. And then when it comes to sharing, it's it's a lift. And I'm not sure about the wide audience.
Yeah, well, I'm curious that people haven't taken it upon themselves after being moved by the experience to share it. The word of mouth can be a very popular way to share something. And I guess that everybody has just had such a private experience that they have kept it for themselves, which is kind of beautiful, really.
It's beautiful. And it is, I mean, it also is like very much the Boston art community, which is very open, specific, but like through word of mouth, through the artists are willing to do something like that. But that most of the artists in the area that I know, like, oh my God, what are you doing? We all want to know what each other is doing. And so within that community, there's good word of mouth. But then beyond that, I don't know. The value of these things it's so private and so personal. And I think about that with everybody who's dealing with loss and the objects that are left behind and the unsaid words and all of the things that need to somehow find a way to cycle through. And I would hope that from just watching someone do it in whatever idiosyncratic way they do it, that it would invite people to make your own, find your own thing to do that can live in the world and move the loss through you.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And so Lucas has inspired 2 major projects. Is there another one on the horizon?
There's always another one on the horizon. There's always some convoluted thing blooming. Over the course of the last few years, I guess 6 years, been working on this project called New Moon Swim. And it's rituals for the new moon to invite sort of beauty in the darkness. And it's a co-created endeavor with a group of women who, every new moon, a different woman over the last 6 years created a different ritual to address a different part of shadow work. And so we're working on the New Moon Swim, trying to figure out how to share those incredible rituals that are like, I can't even describe. They're so gorgeous. So that's a book we're working on.
So
figure out.
So would somebody from outside of your immediate locale be able to participate in that? Is that something that has roots or tendrils?
We just
can I come? I want to come.
They want to come now. What I really want. So we're trying to figure out, again, the same thing. Like, we're going to share these things, and we finished our last season. We do it's like a cycle. So It starts in September, ends in June. We did 6 cycles, and then I ended the whole thing because it felt like time. So and then if we restart, we want to restart with the intention of, being able to share wider. And so we want to be able to understand who is that. Okay, good. You want to come? Let's go. Are you kidding? Your brain on this one.
Are you kidding? Out in Santa Fe? I mean, you have the entire outside of Salem, Mass, the witched universe.
On
the planet, right? That would be really fun. But are you still doing music?
That's a big part of my life. This is a side conversation, but when I think about music, I think a lot about Rob. I've written a whole album post Lucas album that I'm practicing now to figure out how to share. And I love those songs. These are the songs of sort of emergence. And so that's one thing. And then the second thing, which is, I feel like my legacy, if I was going to die, my legacy will be in music in a certain way. And I'll tell you what it is. That would be that, hold on a second. Okay. So I was raised by 2 musicians. My parents met on the set at Penn State of Guys and Dolls. My mom was the accompanist and my dad was the musical director. So
I just have to interject that my parents both were players in Guys and Dolls. So growing up, I know the whole musical score. My dad was Sky Masterson, and my mom was a hotbox girl.
It's so cute. All I really need is the girl. So
cool.
Yeah, my dad was like a very accomplished jazz musician and businessman, and my mom is 87 and she has an 18-piece jazz band. And in Guilford, Connecticut, if anybody in Connecticut wants to hire a band, go to Tuxedo Junction, Sounds of Swing. But for me, like, I never really felt, I knew I had music in my body, but I didn't have access to picking up an instrument, making it, being confident. But my dad passed away in 2004, and then my son Eli broke his collarbone, and I was like, I guess I'm going to pick up a ukulele. And so I was like, who can be judgy about somebody with a ukulele? And so I started like just learning the ukulele, and then cut to the 2015, we like played Iceland Airwaves off venue with our band. It was so fun to learn how to like play an instrument, play a couple instruments, write songs, just keep going. Have great friends who are like, we'll help you. You know, my brother is so good. He was so talented. But what I offered in my learning was I realized that one of the things that I felt uncomfortable about in being a learner is being looked at and evaluated before you were ready, but still needing to like practice. And so I started this thing called the All Play. And the All Play started here in my house. I don't have a big house, but we turned it into a stage. And the only people who are allowed to come are people who are going to play or play together or make a little band. And we pick a theme. You know, the first theme we did was we wanted the kids to know Abbey Road. And so we were like, we're going to play Abbey Road from the beginning and have dinner, side A, have dinner, then play side B. And then, so everybody like picked one of the songs in groups and learned it, and then we played it out. And then from there we had like a glam jam. It was all hair bands, and the Van Jam, all Van Morrison, and then all different things. And so it's been so many years, and they're actually, our friends in Charlottesville started their own All Play. It's our first like franchise of All Play. But for me, one of the things that I wanted to share in that is that the audience has a job, and it's not to be judgy. The job is to hold the space for the person to do the thing they want to do. And so that's the vibe and I think that's like part of my teaching philosophy too. It's just like, I want permission, I want love, and I want somebody to just flourish and feel like they can try and be like ridiculous and bring their best self forward. And so in the All Play, the safety of the All Play is in that no one is there that is not putting themselves sort of at risk. So it sounds horrible, but it's the greatest thing of all time.
It doesn't sound horrible at all. In fact, again, it sounds like the most exportable to Santa Fe project.
Yeah, you want to do an All Play Santa Fe? I will help you do that.
I mean,
That
you
is
just
my
need to come visit me.
pleasure. I will
Oh my
be there.
God. So, I mean, I started these art of conversation dinners, which are sort of, trying a little bit of the same thing, more of a deep dive into a particular topic. And I invite strangers so that, we can really go deep fast. You would think you couldn't with strangers, but somehow it's easier with strangers than with friends. And it's the same idea, you come being committed to be an audience member and hold the space for this conversation. And that the hope is that everybody will spin off and host their own art of conversation. But an All Play, man,
Oh my God.
boy, could we have fun with that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that you can do intergenerationally and all levels. So in every like cluster that you need to have like one person who can hold it down, either like a young person who's learning or an adult learner, and you make these groups so that the song is enjoyable for everyone and makes the person learning feel like, oh my God, I'm in something that's like better than I could do alone. But those I agree with you, these provisional communities, which is like my specialty, the provisional community, people can hold information for each other and share things in those communities that might worry their families, if they said, but like, especially in loss processing, you come together and it's like, I'm dealing with this, I'm trying to figure it out. And you just want to say it. You just want to like get it out or like just share it in a way that isn't gonna drag after you. And I find there's such beauty in those intersections. And hopefully they, like you said, they spin off and make their own shapes, and people see that there's such beauty in conversation with strangers and in the humanity of people, in the possible humanity of,
Yeah. Well, and it requires such courage. And that's the thing that both of these, our projects, have in common, is that the courage that it takes to show up for one of these events, take a chance, be vulnerable, be open. And oftentimes there's somebody else ends up saying the thing that you've been afraid to say. And then all of a sudden permission is just blossoms. And it's just such a beautiful thing to behold. And it's so hard to describe to other people. Like as I've been trying to garner support around this or get other people to participate, not people are happy to come to my house for dinner. That's not the issue. But to take the initiative to sponsor their own, they think, oh, well, I'm not sure if I know how to do it. So we're trying to come up with devices like conversation cards and conversation prompts. At the last event I had, under everybody's plate, we had a strip of paper, a fortune cookie kind of thing, and everybody got a chance to read theirs, which was a thought-provoking idea. Some of them were humorous, some of them were very serious. And I didn't want to put anybody on the spot that they had to answer the question that was underneath them, because some of them are, very rhetorical questions. But what was amazing to watch is that we all read them at the beginning of the dinner. And by the end of dinner, in some way, shape, or form, every topic had been somewhat touched upon organically through the conversation.
I love that.
It's kind of like the what do you call it? The conversational version of improvisational music. It just kind of it happened, and it was just, it's so cool.
That sounds like this, you were saying, planting the seeds. It just putting a little bit out that somebody's gonna go in the back of their mind, and later on in the evening it'll be like, actually, that actually grew into some kind of conversational thing. There was a moment when I first wrote the thing with the bedrooms. I shared it on Zoom with people, and I was like, I just want to share you this thing that I wrote. And it's moving, and in Zoom it's so one-on-one, and it's just a listening, watching experience. And I shared it with a friend who lives in Minneapolis, and I said, I'm going to share this with you, but then I think I'm just going to put it away because I just don't see how I can share it in the world. I just don't see. I can't envision it. And I shared with him, and then he said, I think what you need to do is bring the spirit of the all play to this bedroom project. He's like, I don't know what I mean by that, but he's like, I think you need to share it in a way that is supported, in the way that you're talking about all play. So I love that No Sleeping comes from all play energy, and all play energy is a little wild, and No Sleeping is not at all wild. But what it does do is ask the audience to be we. And we is a shape, a provisional shape, and an attitude. And it's this idea of a temporary connection, that you're not a passive observer, that your presence is actually required, not as not removed, but forward.
Yeah.
And I feel like in this moment in time, there's so much passive engagement in things, like these things are going on, and you're behind a screen or behind a paywall or I don't know, everything. There's a passivity in play, and
Totally get that. Yeah, I mean, because that's exactly this the immersive quality of both of these things, and getting people face to face and part of the whole engagement. There should be like a whole new art form that is these things. It's a very specific kind of immersive engagement.
Yeah.
That requires people to show up in a way that it's creative. It's inherently creative because you have to generate. You have to be generative, and I think it's a really important invitation for people right now.
It is, and I can see why somebody wouldn't want, because it's asking a step forward into discomfort. And one of the crises of our moment is that discomfort is seen as something to reject, but actually spaces of discomfort is where a lot of action and healing happen. And stepping into discomfort, getting used to that discomfort, and be able to speak to it, reach your hand out across through it, and let it be something that you just inhabit your body and not run away from. It feels like this moment is asking for that. And so I guess what I'm trying to do is through these audience engagements, evaluate that word audience.
That's beautiful. And so one of the things that I think we may have already sent it to you, but it's going to be it'll come to you after this. We're asking you to fill out a questionnaire that involves your answers to which will become part of a creativity toolkit that we're putting together for our Substack community. And one of the new initiatives that we're starting in February is a Substack Live. And so we'll extract from our various guest questionnaires exercises that they use in their practices to kind of engage the muse or their own thought process, whatever it is. And we're going to be offering these as a Substack Live. So people will be able to come in, interrupt. We're thinking of it in the same way that you go to the gym or you go to have a spiritual practice. This will be your creativity practice that you can come to at a designated time every month, be in community with people, and practice these exercises that we will be offering in a group setting. So when you fill out your creativity toolkit questionnaire, if you'll keep that in mind as what we could use for a Substack Live exercise, and then and by all means, make it integrated into the projects that you're already doing, what you've gleaned from those. But this is obviously something that you and I both have an interest in. And so let's dance. Let's see what we can do.
I love it.
Yeah, that's so perfect. Well, let's just end it there. And I feel like you and I have many more conversations.
Oh my God.
Ahead of us.
I'm so glad to know you and what you're doing. It's such important work. Thank you.
Back at you. And I feel like I have a feeling, because Daniel and I had an absolute immediate, he's a great friend of my sister's. When I met him, it was an immediate connection too. And so I can't wait to give him a big hug and thank him for introducing me to you. And I can't wait to meet you in person and
same.
give you that big hug. So
same. I love that.
Thanks for joining us today. ArtStorming is brought to you and supported by ArtBridge NM and listeners like you. Look for us on your favorite podcast platforms or wherever you listen. Your subscriptions, likes, comments, and shares help us to reach more listeners and attract the support we need to thrive in these challenging times. If you love what you hear, please consider making a contribution. We rely on your help to keep these conversations going. Every dollar you contribute goes directly into programs that support our mission. And we've been offered a matching grant that will match every dollar that you contribute. That means more compelling stories, more in-depth articles, and an even greater impact on our community. Please visit our website at www.artbridgenm.org, and thank you so much for being an essential part of our work.